Life has a way of presenting us with challenges, obstacles, and moments of self-doubt. But here's a truth that I've discovered we can change in an instant. The mind is not as rigid as we think. The body is not as immovable as we feel. And habits, those simple, almost invisible routines, have the power to either lock us into mediocrity or launch us into something extraordinary. The first habit I embraced that changed my life was a simple yet powerful mindset shift, taking full responsibility for my life. At first glance, this might seem like a no-brainer, but I can assure you that for most of my life this wasn't the case. I was someone who would often look outward when things went wrong. Whether it was circumstances, other people, or even the universe itself, I found it easy to blame anything but myself. It wasn't that I was inherently lazy or irresponsible, but rather I hadn't fully grasped the true power that comes with responsibility. It took a moment of clarity, a deep realization that everything in my life was the result of my choices, actions, and inactions. Every setback, every obstacle, and every triumph I had experienced up until that point had come about because of decisions I made, sometimes consciously and sometimes without even realizing it. Once I understood this, everything changed. Taking responsibility is often misconstrued as a burden. People believe that if they accept responsibility for everything in their life, it means they must bear the weight of all their problems. But here's the twist: responsibility is freedom. When you take full responsibility for your life, you stop being a victim of circumstances, and instead you become the architect of your own destiny. No longer are you helplessly waiting for someone or something to change the situation for you. You are the one who has the power to shape the outcome. It's incredibly liberating. This concept isn't about blaming yourself for everything that happens to you, but rather acknowledging that, no matter the external circumstances, you have the ability to control how you respond. Life is not about what happens to you, it's about how you react to what happens. For example, I used to think that external factors were to blame for my lack of success, whether it was my job, the people around me, or the state of the world. I felt powerless in many ways because I was convinced that those factors had a greater influence over me than my own actions. But when I started taking full responsibility, I stopped seeing myself as a passive observer. I became an active participant in my own life. I started asking myself the critical questions: what can I do differently? What action can I take right now to improve my situation? How can I change my mindset to see opportunities rather than obstacles? This shift didn't happen overnight. It took time to rewire my thinking. It required challenging my old habits, confronting my fears, and acknowledging my weaknesses. It was uncomfortable at first, and I'll be honest, it didn't always feel good. But each time I took responsibility, I felt more empowered. I realized that, while I couldn't control everything that happened to me, I could control my response, and that response, over time, would shape the direction of my life. One of the most profound shifts came when I realized that taking responsibility isn't just about big decisions or major events. It's also about the small, seemingly insignificant choices that we make every day. For instance, the choice to get out of bed when the alarm rings, to eat that nutritious meal, to take that walk instead of sitting on the couch for hours, or to push through that difficult conversation. It's about taking control of the small moments and aligning them with your larger goals and values. I used to feel like those small choices didn't matter much, but I soon discovered that they are the foundation of everything. Every small, responsible decision adds up, and it's these moments that ultimately define the course of your life. When I began to take responsibility for everything in my life, including the areas that I had previously avoided or blamed on others, I noticed something remarkable. I began to attract more opportunities, more positive experiences, and more support from those around me. People who see you taking responsibility for your actions and decisions are more likely to trust you, respect you, and offer their help. Responsibility builds character, and character attracts opportunity. Moreover, this habit led me to one of the most critical realizations of all: taking responsibility is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about continually moving forward, learning from mistakes, and striving to do better next time. It's about giving yourself permission to fail, but not letting that failure define you. Failure is simply feedback, an opportunity to learn and adjust your course. And here's the paradox: by taking full responsibility for my life, I found myself with more freedom than I had ever imagined. I wasn't shackled by excuses or external factors anymore. I was free to act, to change, to grow. I wasn't waiting for life to happen to me. I was actively making life happen for me. So what does this mean for you? If you want to change your life, take full responsibility for it. Stop waiting for someone else to fix your problems. Stop looking to circumstances or people for the answers. Take ownership of your decisions, your actions, and most importantly, your responses. When you do this, you unlock the power to transform every area of your life: your relationships, your career, your health, and your future. It's not easy, but it is simple. And the rewards are more profound than you can imagine. So take responsibility for your past, for your present, and for your future. The moment you do, your life will begin to shift in ways you can't even anticipate. The second habit that transformed my life was the establishment of a disciplined morning routine. In the past, my mornings were chaotic and unstructured. I would wake up to the sound of my alarm, groggily reach for my phone, and before I knew it, I was already caught up in the whirlwind of messages, emails, and notifications. The first moments of my day were spent reacting to the outside world rather than preparing myself to take charge of it. My mind was scattered, my energy low, and the sense of direction for the day was completely missing. I realized that my mornings were setting the tone for the entire day, and if I didn't take control of that, then the day would take control of me. I started learning about how the most successful and productive people in the world structure their mornings, and I discovered a pattern. They had clear, intentional rituals that focused on self-care, reflection, and preparation. The idea of waking up earlier to create a morning routine felt overwhelming. I had grown accustomed to hitting the snooze button and starting my day in a rush, but I knew that if I truly wanted to change my life, I had to change my approach to the first part of the day. I committed to waking up earlier, at least an hour before I had to leave for work. Initially, this felt difficult. The bed was warm, and the pull of comfort was strong. But I made the decision to fight that temptation. Slowly, I started to see the benefits of rising earlier. The first step I took was to remove distractions from the morning. I stopped checking my phone right away. Instead, I took time for myself. I spent a few minutes in quiet reflection, either through meditation or journaling. This was the moment where I could connect with myself before the demands of the world took over. I would focus on my breath, let go of any anxiety or stress from the previous day, and set my intentions for the day ahead. It was incredible how just a few minutes of silence and reflection could create such a sense of calm and clarity. The next part of my morning routine involved physical activity. At first, I wasn't a morning person, and the thought of exercising so early in the day felt like a monumental task. But I realized that the body needs movement to wake up fully, to get the blood flowing, and to energize the mind. So I started doing something simple: a short workout or even just a brisk walk. It didn't have to be intense or long, but it was enough to shift my energy levels from sluggish to active. This physical movement became the catalyst for momentum in the rest of my day. As I continued to establish this morning routine, I added a third component: reading. I had always loved books, but I often found myself too busy to read during the day. I decided to dedicate the first part of my morning to reading, whether it was a book about personal development, leadership, or even a novel that inspired me. The key was to immerse myself in something meaningful before the distractions of life took hold. This reading time not only nurtured my mind, but it also gave me a sense of personal growth and learning each day. By starting my morning with knowledge and inspiration, I was fueling my mind with the right kind of content, rather than starting the day with the noise and negativity of the news or social media. Next, I began to plan my day. I spent a few minutes reviewing my goals and organizing my tasks. This simple act of planning was a game changer. Instead of moving through the day without a clear focus, I now had a roadmap. I could see the important tasks, the priorities, and the opportunities ahead of me. I could also anticipate the challenges that might arise and mentally prepare for them. This clarity allowed me to move through the day with purpose and intention, rather than drifting through it reactively. Finally, I made sure to eat a nourishing breakfast. In the past, I often skipped meals or settled for something quick and unhealthy. But I soon realized that what I put into my body directly impacted my energy levels, mood, and overall sense of well-being. I started preparing a wholesome breakfast that would fuel me for the day ahead, whether it was a smoothie, oatmeal, or eggs with vegetables. A good breakfast became not just a physical necessity, but also a symbol of taking care of myself. The results of this morning routine were profound. Within just a week, I noticed a shift in my mental clarity, my physical energy, and my overall sense of control. I was no longer waking up to a flood of notifications or scrambling to get out the door. Instead, I started the day with calm, focus, and intention. This sense of control over my mornings gave me control over my entire day. One of the most remarkable changes was how my productivity increased. With a clear plan for the day and a solid foundation of self-care, I found that I was able to approach my work with a greater sense of purpose and efficiency. There was no longer a constant battle to stay focused or motivated. I had already won the first battle of the day by taking responsibility for my own time and energy. But perhaps the greatest benefit of this morning routine was the way it started to impact my mindset. As I continued to wake up earlier and dedicate time to self-reflection, physical activity, reading, and planning, I found that I approached challenges with a much clearer and more positive attitude. I had set the tone for the day, and because of that, I was far less likely to be swayed by external events or distractions. In the end, a structured morning routine became not just a habit, but a powerful tool for personal transformation. It was the catalyst for a shift in my mindset, my productivity, and my overall approach to life. I learned that the mornings are not to be rushed or wasted. They are the foundation upon which the rest of the day is built. And when you start the day with intention, you create a ripple effect that carries through every hour that follows. The third habit that drastically reshaped my life was the adoption of the 80/20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. This principle suggests that 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts. It sounds simple enough, but for a long time I was caught up in the misconception that success was about doing more, working harder, checking more tasks off my list, and keeping myself busy. I felt that if I wasn't constantly moving, constantly working, I wasn't being productive or effective. The problem with this mindset is that it often leads to burnout and frustration, as it's easy to mistake being busy for being productive. The 80/20 rule challenged that assumption and made me rethink how I used my time. The first step I took was to identify the most impactful tasks I was doing in any given day. I took a deep look at how I was spending my time and which activities were actually driving the most meaningful results. It was eye-opening. I had been spending an inordinate amount of time on tasks that, in the grand scheme of things, had little impact on my life or my goals. I was checking emails constantly, attending meetings that were not necessary, and spending far too much time on menial tasks that did nothing to move the needle forward. I realized that the majority of my efforts weren't contributing to the things that truly mattered. Once I understood this, I made it a priority to focus on the 20% of tasks that were bringing the most value to my life. These were the activities that aligned with my long-term goals and aspirations, whether that was working on a specific project at work, developing my personal brand, or investing time in relationships that were important to me. I realized that if I spent my energy on the few high-impact tasks, I could achieve far greater results with much less effort. The key to applying the 80/20 rule isn't just about identifying the most important tasks, it's also about being brutally honest with yourself about what you can and can't afford to spend time on. This requires learning how to say no. Prioritizing the vital few meant that I had to stop saying yes to every request, every meeting, and every distraction that came my way. I had to become comfortable with setting boundaries, and this wasn't always easy. At first, I felt guilty saying no to things that didn't directly contribute to my goals. But over time, I learned that saying no to the unimportant allowed me to say yes to the things that truly mattered. This was a game changer. Once I started to focus on the critical 20%, I noticed that my productivity skyrocketed. I was able to accomplish more in less time because I was no longer caught up in the details of tasks that didn't make a meaningful difference. Instead, I was focusing my energy on projects that aligned with my purpose, that had the potential to yield the highest returns in terms of personal satisfaction and professional success. The shift was also mental. I stopped feeling overwhelmed by the constant pressure to do more. Instead of trying to keep up with everything, I began to feel a sense of control over my time and energy. I wasn't just reacting to the world around me, I was proactively managing my day with intention and focus. The more I embraced this principle, the more I realized that life isn't about doing more. It's about doing less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. One of the most surprising results of applying the 80/20 rule was how much better I felt. I used to believe that the key to success was being busy all the time, always having something to do. But when I eliminated the clutter from my schedule and focused on the essential, I felt a sense of peace and balance that I had never experienced before. I no longer felt the need to prove my worth through constant activity. Instead, I felt that my time was being used wisely and effectively. Applying the 80/20 rule also helped me to reassess my relationships. Just as in work, not all relationships are created equal in terms of their impact. I started to focus more on the people who truly supported me, inspired me, and contributed to my personal growth. I realized that the majority of my emotional energy was being spent on a small number of people who weren't aligned with my values or goals. By shifting my focus to the relationships that mattered most, I found myself with a much stronger support network and more fulfilling connections. Another area where the 80/20 rule had a profound effect was in my health and well-being. I used to think that maintaining a healthy lifestyle required constant attention, long workouts, restrictive diets, and constant vigilance. But I began to see that, just like in work, there were a few key activities that had the greatest impact on my physical health. By focusing on those, whether it was regular exercise, eating nutritious foods, or getting enough sleep, I was able to improve my overall health without the stress and pressure of trying to do everything perfectly. In the end, adopting the 80/20 rule didn't just help me become more efficient, it helped me become more intentional with my time and energy. It taught me to focus on what truly matters and to let go of the noise and distractions that clutter our lives. When you understand that a small percentage of your efforts can yield the majority of your results, you stop wasting time on things that don't contribute to your goals. You become more focused, more strategic, and ultimately more successful in achieving what you want out of life. The fourth habit that fundamentally shifted my perspective and led to significant personal growth was the decision to confront my fears head-on. Fear is an inevitable part of life. It's something we all experience, whether it's the fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, or fear of success itself. For most of my life, I ran from these fears. I avoided uncomfortable situations, put off challenging tasks, and made excuses for why I couldn't do something. I believed that by avoiding my fears, I was protecting myself. But in reality, I was only keeping myself trapped in a cycle of stagnation. Eventually, I came to understand that fear doesn't go away by avoiding it. In fact, the more I ran from it, the stronger it became. Fear has this insidious way of growing in the shadows, feeding off our avoidance and making us believe that we are powerless. The more I ignored my fears, the more control they had over me. They started to dictate my decisions, limiting my potential and keeping me from taking bold steps toward what I truly wanted in life. The breakthrough came when I realized that fear is not something to be avoided, it's something to be confronted. Fear, in its essence, is just an emotion. It's a signal that we're about to step out of our comfort zones and into new territory. And that's exactly why it's so powerful. It indicates growth. So I made the decision to face my fears directly, to stop letting them dictate the terms of my life. The process of confronting fear wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't comfortable. The first time I deliberately took on something I was afraid of, I felt like I was walking into the unknown with no safety net. It was terrifying. But there was something liberating about it too. When I took that first step into discomfort, I realized that fear wasn't as paralyzing as I had thought. It didn't control me unless I allowed it to. One of the most valuable lessons I learned through this experience was that fear often isn't based in reality. We have a tendency to imagine worst-case scenarios, to exaggerate the negative outcomes, and to assume that we won't be able to handle the challenges that come our way. But more often than not, the fear is not about what's actually going to happen, it's about what we believe might happen. When I confronted my fears, I found that the reality wasn't nearly as bad as the stories I had told myself. Most of the things I feared never came to pass, and when they did, I was often far more capable of handling them than I had ever given myself credit for. Taking action in the face of fear began to build my confidence. Each time I confronted a fear, no matter how small the step, I gained a little more control over my life. I began to see fear as a signal, not a stop sign. It was a signal that I was about to grow, to stretch beyond what was comfortable, to step into new. The more I took action despite my fear, the more I realized that fear wasn't something that needed to stop me. It could be a tool to propel me forward. This habit also taught me something critical about the nature of failure. For much of my life, I feared failure more than anything else. I believed that failure was something to be avoided at all costs. But when I began to confront my fears, I quickly realized that failure wasn't the end, it was part of the process. In fact, failure was often the most valuable part of the process. It taught me lessons I couldn't learn any other way. I began to embrace failure, not as a mark of incompetence, but as a necessary step on the path to success. I also started to understand that the fear of failure is often rooted in a fear of judgment. We fear what others might think of us if we fail. But this fear, too, is largely unfounded. When I stopped worrying about other people's opinions and focused instead on my own growth, I was able to act with greater freedom. I realized that my worth wasn't defined by my successes or failures, but by my willingness to keep moving forward, no matter what. The more I confronted my fears, the more I saw the incredible power of courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the willingness to act in spite of fear. It's about choosing to take the next step, even when your heart is racing and your mind is telling you to turn back. I found that courage, more than any innate ability or talent, was the key to unlocking my potential. The more courage I exercised, the more resilient I became, and the more I was able to face new challenges with a sense of determination and confidence. Confronting my fears became a habit that served as the foundation for personal growth and transformation. It allowed me to break free from the limitations I had imposed on myself and to live a life that was driven by possibility rather than fear. I stopped letting fear hold me back, and instead, I began to use it as a catalyst for growth. Fear is no longer a barrier, it's a doorway to new opportunities, new experiences, and new versions of myself that I never thought possible. By making the habit of confronting fear a central part of my life, I became not just more successful, but more fulfilled. I realized that the greatest rewards lie on the other side of fear, and the only way to reach them is to face our fears head on. This habit transformed me into someone who doesn't shy away from challenges, but embraces them with the understanding that the bigger the fear, the greater the potential for growth. The fifth habit that had a profound impact on my life was the practice of gratitude, not just as a fleeting feeling or a daily acknowledgement, but as a deep, intentional mindset that I carried with me through every part of my life. Prior to adopting this habit, I often found myself focused on what I didn't have, what I had lost, or what I was still striving for. I was constantly seeking more, always aiming to achieve the next goal, acquire the next thing, or reach the next milestone. But despite this constant striving, I never felt truly content. There was always something missing, always a sense of dissatisfaction. I realized that no amount of external success could fix an internal lack of appreciation. One day I stumbled upon the idea that gratitude is the key to lasting fulfillment. At first it seemed simple, even overly simplistic. But as I began to incorporate it into my life more intentionally, I began to see just how powerful it really was. I started by setting aside time each day to reflect on the things I was grateful for. At first it was difficult to get beyond the obvious: my health, my family, my home. But soon, I began to dig deeper. I started noticing the smaller things: the warmth of the sun on my face in the morning, the sound of birds outside my window, the feeling of a cup of coffee in my hands, the kindness of a stranger. What struck me most was that, the more I practiced gratitude, the more I began to see these small blessings. They were always there, but my attention had been elsewhere. Gratitude shifted my focus from what was lacking to what was abundant. It rewired my brain to look for the positive, the good, and the beautiful in my life, instead of fixating on what wasn't going right or what I didn't have. But this habit went beyond just acknowledging the good things. I began to realize that gratitude is also about embracing the challenges and the struggles. It's easy to be thankful when everything is going well, but true gratitude comes when we learn to see the value in the difficulties we face. The setbacks, the obstacles, the failures, they are all part of the process. I began to see them not as signs of defeat, but as opportunities for growth. When I faced challenges, I started to ask myself, what can I learn from this? How can this situation make me stronger? This shift in perspective was incredibly freeing. Instead of feeling defeated by adversity, I started feeling empowered by it. I learned to be grateful not only for my victories, but for my struggles as well. They were shaping me into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Gratitude also began to have a profound effect on my relationships. By expressing gratitude more openly and regularly, I noticed a shift in how I interacted with others. I became more present, more aware, and more appreciative of the people in my life. I started taking the time to tell my loved ones how much I valued them, how thankful I was for their support, and how much they meant to me. This simple act of expressing appreciation strengthened my connections with others. It deepened my relationships, making them more meaningful and authentic. Gratitude brought a sense of warmth and generosity into my interactions, and I began to notice that this warmth was returned to me in abundance. People seemed to respond to my gratitude with kindness, understanding, and even more acts of kindness. On a larger scale, gratitude also transformed my view of the world. Before I adopted this habit, I had a tendency to focus on what was wrong with the world, the injustices, the negativity, the hardships. I was often frustrated with how things were, and I felt powerless to change them. But gratitude opened my eyes to the many positive aspects of the world that often go unnoticed. There was beauty in the everyday moments, kindness in the most unexpected places, and goodness in the hearts of people, even amidst the chaos. Gratitude didn't change the fact that life has its challenges, but it gave me the ability to see the goodness that exists even in difficult times. As I continued practicing gratitude, I also noticed an improvement in my overall well-being. Research shows that gratitude has a profound effect on mental health, and I experienced this firsthand. I felt more at peace, less stressed, and more optimistic about the future. Gratitude helped me let go of the need for perfection and accept life as it is, with all its ups and downs. I no longer felt like I had to be constantly chasing after something more to feel fulfilled. Instead, I learned to appreciate what I already had and find joy in the present moment. This shift in mindset also led to greater success in my personal and professional life. Gratitude increased my resilience, which meant that I was better able to handle setbacks and obstacles. Instead of being discouraged when things didn't go as planned, I took those challenges in stride, knowing that I had the inner strength to overcome them. Gratitude also kept me grounded during times of success. I found that the more I appreciated my progress, the more I was motivated to continue working toward my goals, not out of a sense of need or desperation, but because I genuinely enjoyed the process of growth and learning. In time, gratitude became a habit that I couldn't go a day without practicing. It became woven into the fabric of my life, influencing the way I saw the world, the way I related to others, and the way I approached my goals. It was no longer something I did sporadically, it was a part of who I was. By making gratitude a consistent habit, I unlocked a sense of peace, fulfillment, and joy that I had never experienced before. And perhaps the most profound result of all was that gratitude taught me to live with purpose, to see every day as a gift, and to embrace both the beauty and the challenges that life has to offer. The 5 habits that changed my life in just 1 week: taking full ownership of my life, embracing the power of intentionality, applying the 80/20 rule, confronting my fears, and practicing gratitude have been transformative. Not only in how I approach my goals, but also in how I see myself and the world around me. These habits have shifted my mindset, altered my daily routine, and opened doors to new opportunities I never thought possible. By taking ownership of my life, I stopped being a passive observer and became an active participant in shaping my own destiny. By embracing intentionality, I stopped letting life just happen to me and started living with purpose, aligning every decision with my long-term goals. The 80/20 rule gave me the insight to focus on what truly matters, eliminating distractions and making every effort count. Confronting my fears empowered me to step outside my comfort zone, leading to personal growth and resilience. And by cultivating gratitude, I found peace and fulfillment in the present moment, recognizing that life's challenges are not obstacles but opportunities for growth. Each of these habits has become a cornerstone of who I am today. They have not only made me more productive and successful, but have also brought a deep sense of fulfillment, meaning, and joy. The results of these changes may not have been immediate, but with time, they've completely reshaped my perspective on life. The truth is, we all have the potential to create meaningful change in our lives, and it begins with the habits we choose to cultivate. By adopting just 1 or 2 of these habits, you can start to see a shift in your own life. And remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Small, consistent changes can lead to profound transformations. Take ownership of your life, be intentional, face your fears, focus on what truly matters, and embrace gratitude. These habits will change the way you live, the way you work, and the way you experience the world around you.